Welcome back to the Self Project Podcast. This podcast is all about self-discovery, self-improvement. It's a space for all the self things that you could need. I'm your host, Christy Martin, and today we have a really awesome guest. Her name is Esther. She was diagnosed at the age of 46 with ADHD, and she shares more of her story just about how it really transformed her life, helped her understand herself better, helped her, better structure her life and overcome some of the things that she was dealing with. So I can't wait for you to dive in and listen. And if you are loving listening to all of our different self-improvement topics, safe space to come and work on your own self-project journey, you can check out the Self-Project membership. I will link it up in the show notes. It's a space every week. We're live talking about different topics that affect us, how we can work through things, how we can heal, how we can become more self-aware and live our best lives and really thrive. So make sure you check out the link in the bio for that. And let's go ahead and jump into our show today. So I just want to kind of kick off. Esther, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today. I have to say, I'm really, really excited to be able to speak with you. When you hear a little bit more about Esther, we're so similar. We both are affected by ADHD. We both are tattooed. We both are in our sobriety journeys. So I'm just really excited to hear more about you. And I'd love to just kind of dive in and let you want to just tell us more about you, Esther?
Oh, that's always the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? Because especially with ADHD, you can just like go, well, I was born and then. So I think that, my sobriety then, let's start with that. So I've been sober for nearly 7 years now. And that was something I never anticipated that I would enjoy. Always thought that alcohol was what made life fun. Until, of course, I realized one day that actually this is ruining everything. I got sober after I had a breakdown, and I ended up doing yoga teacher training. And that gave me a lot of coping strategies, breath and stress release, and a lot of self-reflection and a lot of inner work, a lot of healing that led me to a place where I was able to say, right, this is hurting me. The alcohol is actually probably going to kill me and I don't need it anymore. So I can just put it to one side and move on into something different in life. And I spent a few years thinking that I was kind of fixed. I got to this place where I was sober and I was feeling pretty good about myself because I was finally able to deal with all the stuff in my head rather than just drowning out all the pain and the noise and the raging that was constantly going on in my head. But I started I became very conscious of the fact that I seemed to be a lot more efficient in an awful lot of ways when I was drinking, that I was able to focus on things a lot more, that I was able to, I thought I was able to manage life better. Of course, I wasn't managing better. I was just a lot less aware of my chaos when I was drinking, because the minute life got chaotic, I would just get drunk and who cares about the chaos when you're drunk? And I was very confused as to why is it that I feel more erratic and more scattered now than I am than I was before. And one day I was watching my son. So my son is 11 now. So we would have been about 7 or 8 maybe. And he was very fidgety. He was very socially awkward. He had a lot of peculiar traits that I knew made him stand out a little bit from other children. And so I started wondering if, because I honed in on the fidgeting and I thought, right, that's ADHD. That could be ADHD. So I'm going to look and see if he's got ADHD. So I started reading lots of lists of symptoms and traits of ADHD. And I saw little bits of my son. No, yeah, he could have ADHD. That could be him. That could be him. But then there was lots that didn't really fit him. But what I did see in bold, flashing neon lights in every single line of the description of ADHD was me. And everything I read about ADHD, it was like, this is me, this is me. It was as, and I remember saying to my mum, it's as if somebody's been following me for a while and watching what I do and then writing down everything I do and putting it on a sheet of paper in front of me. Because it was so much like me. It was like, do they know me? What's going on? Do these people know me? I've never met the person who's written this article, but it's like they know me. And so I found out that I worked out that I have ADHD, and everything I thought I knew about myself, everything that I'd ever told myself was who I was. Suddenly it was like, actually, no, that's not who I am then, because that's because of this. So all the things all the criticisms that I'd ever leveled at myself, all the criticisms that everybody else had leveled at me, that had felt like they were part of the bad part of me, suddenly it was like, well, that's just how my brain works. So I can't be a bad person because I can't turn up on time for anything. That doesn't make me bad. That just means I've got this thing, this ADHD, this brain that doesn't quite fit into those boxes that you people seem to occupy. And when I got diagnosed, so it was a while before I actually got diagnosed, and the diagnosis itself was hilariously so ADHD that it was ridiculous, because I was answering these questions in the most ADHD way imaginable. I was like bouncing up and down in my seat, and every question was answered with 3 stories to explain why the answer to that question was yes. And I think me and the psychiatrist both knew within about 5 questions that the answer was going to be a resounding yes, you definitely have ADHD. He didn't even bother to like go through the answers at the end to add up the scores on the questionnaire. He just said, yes, you totally got it. And it was like, it was such a validation of me. And I mean, I'm sure, like, if you were diagnosed late in life, as I suspect an awful lot of women in particular, I think most women seem to figure it out as adults rather than get diagnosed as children. That you go through this period of grieving, thinking, oh, but imagine if they'd known when I was 5, and imagine if they'd known when I was 10, how different my life could have been, and all the things, all the could have beens, and the wish I had, and all this. I went through this quite deep grieving process for a little while. And then I started to think, yeah, but it's okay, because I'm here now, and this is who I am, and actually, I'm kind of cool. And yes, my life has been a total car crash, but I'm okay. And it was just this, and I love it now. I mean, if I could go around waving a flag saying ADHD rocks most of the time, I probably would, because I think that all the things that I love about my life and all the things that I love about me are directly because I have ADHD. And if I didn't have ADHD, I would be a completely different person. I probably wouldn't be talking on podcasts and cracking jokes about my car crash life. And it's just, I think it's so cool. And I love meeting other people who also have ADHD, particularly if they also covered in tattoos and are also sober. Brilliant. So, I mean, I could keep talking for ages. But yeah, so that's my diagnosis story.
I think that's interesting. I actually read something recently, and I was trying to pull it up because I was thinking, oh, did I save that? But I was reading recently about ADHDers and addiction, and how it's very common for those with ADHD to fall into addiction just because of those things, almost like we're looking for that stimulation for our brains, or, we're looking for those hits of dopamine, or all of those different chemicals that, we're maybe lacking in the brain, or we don't have as much of. We're using these different substances or these other things, these unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage it. I found myself in that trap as well. Like, I'm still, and I've just diagnosed myself because that's what I do. And actually my youngest son has it as well. He was diagnosed, and that's kind of how I again discovered my own journey of just, I always thought I was just scatterbrained and just like all over the place. And I'm just like, well, that's just me. I just can't life, I just thought that I was a hot mess. And then, yeah, after going through his journey with him, I'm like, nope, I'm pretty sure that I have ADHD too, because a lot of the same strategies that work for him, they'll work for me. And so it's interesting. I think it's so interesting to hear the stories of people. So I started drinking alcohol for the same reason. Things got just chaotic and overwhelming, and my brain would just be like, it would literally feel like it was just kind of shorting is the way that I would think of it. And I would just be like, and like you said, the drinking would calm the chaos, make things okay, or like you said, just make it to where we didn't notice that everything around us was in shambles. And then but I noticed from there, like I got sober, but then I was smoking like a train, right? I went on over smoking cigarettes like a train. And then from there, then I was using marijuana to manage it. And so I've noticed that pattern with myself. So I thought that it was really interesting when I found, reading that story about addiction and how it can be really common for ADHDers. So just throwing that out there, if you are somebody with ADHD, just being really extra aware of that, just because I know for myself, this is how it shows up. Like I'm constantly seeking stimulation. So I have to even be careful with food. Like sometimes I'll cruise through the kitchen and I'm just like, I need stimulation. And I'm like, whoa, okay, don't get it through like calm down. So I think that this is really important that we're talking about it, especially like you said, as women being diagnosed later in life. I feel like ADHD has really only started becoming something that we really talk about and we really start advocating for, and we're trying to understand and help only within maybe the last decade. Honestly, I feel that way. So when we look at ourselves, like we said, as women, as girls, they're they're just not, what am I trying to say? Like they're not diagnosed with it. Like it's far more prevalent in boys, or maybe it shows up differently. I have a lot of friends who say theirs shows up more as inattentive than the hyperactive.
Yeah, more women get diagnosed with inattentive, and that's the one that's easy to miss, because inattentive girls don't cause trouble. Inattentive girls just slip under the radar. They don't do as well. They're the ones like their report cards constantly say could do better, daydreaming, could do better, always away with the fairies, or in her own little world. And these are things that I know I had. So they're the one, they're constantly underachieving. And because they're not actually causing problems, the teachers aren't complaining about them. So the teachers aren't pulling the parents in. The teachers aren't even noticing that they exist probably half the time, because they're just so quiet. And, if they get into trouble, it's because they weren't listening when they got asked a question, rather than they're like right in the teacher's face going,
Rather than, I think of my little one who's just always, poking at somebody or having an outburst or like having an attitude. So
yeah. And it's those girls that then are going to end up with depression and anxiety, low self-esteem, and they will end up then, going into addiction and all sorts of other maladaptive behaviors to reinforce, to try and boost their self-esteem and get themselves through life, where they've internalized that they're a bit crap. Whereas actually they've got this brain in their heads that's capable of so much, if only they didn't feel so bad about themselves.
Oh, yes. I try to stress the importance of that all the time, that just because the ADHD brain, it does work differently. Some things are more difficult, but I think about too with myself and my son, when there's something we're really passionate about, or like me with my creativity. Oh, I can focus, right? We can focus.
Oh yeah. And we can be brilliant.
Oh my gosh, we can. So I love that we're talking about this, just because we're not neurotypical doesn't mean that we're not, completely here to change the world.
Yeah.
That's what I want to say. We're
Yeah.
here to change the world.
I think that the only people who do change the world are the ones with the brains that don't work the same as the norm, because the people whose brains work the same as the norm just accept the norm. It's the brains like ours that say, hang on, this could be done a lot better. Let's do this differently. And then we try something completely mad and it works.
I love that. I love that. And it's such an empowering way to look at it too, not looking at it as a condition or an illness or something that's wrong with you, but looking at it as like a superpower almost, right? So we got to learn some extra strategies, probably do things a little bit different, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I liken it to, like, I'm left-handed and I live in a right-handed world. So I've had to adapt my whole life to being left-handed, because the world isn't built for left-handed people. But nobody tells me there's something wrong with me because I'm left-handed. I just have to manage things differently. So things might be a bit more difficult for me, but I adapt and I get on with it. And nobody has ever labeled left-handedness as a disorder, but somebody with who is left-handed can be quite disadvantaged in a right-handed world. But it's not a disorder. It's really interesting. I find that really, I don't see any difference. My hands work differently to the norm, and my brain works differently to the norm.
Oh, I love that you share that with us, because I think that that's like the perfect metaphor to say, yeah, we don't go around saying like, oh, you're left-handed, you know. you need to go get some help for that.
Yeah, I know. Have some medication, and so you can be right-handed.
Yes. So let's talk about, I saw you've written a book about your recovery. Is this correct?
I have, yes. Yes,
Tell me
I have. That was the most ADHD thing I ever did in my entire life too.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So I was booked to speak at a conference in India. So this was my first trip to India. It was my first time of being invited to be a speaker at an international event. And I was super excited, as you can imagine. And I'd been sober by this point for about a year and a half. Yeah, about a year and a half. And we were given the opportunity to connect with fellow speakers beforehand. So one of the talks that I was going to be on was a panel discussion. And I connected with one of the people who was going to be part of this panel discussion. And we had a Skype call. And she told me that she'd written a book that she was going to launch at the conference. So my FOMO kicked in. And I was like, I want to write a book to launch at the conference. So this was about 6 weeks before the conference. And I'd started doing this because I am a writer. And I started doing this writing every day through March challenge with a couple of friends. And of course, I'd only done like half of it. And so I had about 15,000 words of what I thought was the makings of the start of a book. So I was like, I spoke to an editor friend of mine, and I said, right, I've got about a month. Would you be prepared to edit this book if I write it and help me get this book ready to publish in just over a month? Like, it's insane, right? And she said yes, because she's obviously as crazy as I am. And so I went to this, what I thought was like half a book. And it quickly became obvious that this was basically the self-therapy that I'd done that was going to mean that I was going to be able to write a book. If I published most of what was there, my family still wouldn't be speaking to me. You know, it was all very much turning over the past and healing stuff. So I essentially had a month to write a book. And I did it. I nearly had a complete breakdown doing it, but I did it. But I didn't know I had ADHD at that point. And I still think that was the most ADHD thing I've ever done. And proof to me that I can, if I'd taken myself off Facebook for a month, and that helped, because I don't think I'd have done it if I'd had Facebook that I could procrastinate with. But you know, I set myself this absolutely lunatic deadline, and I had a really compelling reason to want to do it. You know, the idea of being able to say, I launched my book in India, and it's about yoga, and I had to launch it in India. It was just going to be wonderful. And I didn't even do much with the launch. I mean, it was I just put a post out on Facebook saying, yay, my book's out. It wasn't even that big a deal, really. But it was what got me to write the book. If I hadn't done that, I still wouldn't have written the book, I don't expect. But yeah, it was an amazing experience to then be able to say, look, I'm an author. And yeah, without a doubt, I haven't done anything quite as extreme or quite as, it gave me such an adrenaline rush. The dopamine, it's like that dopamine may as well pretty much flew me to India. You know, that pretty much got me there on its own. It was incredible.
Esther, I'm laughing so hard because you're all, that's such an ADHD thing. And I'm like, So I'm part of this book collaboration. I'm very excited. I'm going to be an author soon too. So I have 3 weeks. I only have to write one chapter. It's only like 2,500 words or something, but I'm still like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Every time I sit down to write, I'm just like, totally, I don't know what to write, so, but I think it's going to be good, again, having myself on that timeline. Otherwise it'll never get done. But my podcast kind of started as a very ADHD thing. When I posted in the group that I'm like, hey, does anybody want to be a guest on my show? And it just kind of blew up. And I started I had like 400 responses on it. And so I'm just like, I'm going to interview everybody. Right. And we went, right. And I went. And now, now I'm like 6 months into it, and it's been an incredible journey. It's been so much fun, like meeting people, having this show, but I'm just like, holy cow, girl, you're gonna burn yourself out. So I can completely relate with you.
Oh, do you know what? I keep talking to myself about, like, thinking about podcasting. And you just got me thinking, that's the way I should do it. Just put myself in the situation where I've got no choice.
Yep. Just throw yourself in there. And I was just like, yeah. And then I'm like, why did I do that? I have 6 months of guests scheduled out. And I'm just like, but it was really good for me too, because I struggled with speaking with people. There's a lot of like limiting beliefs for me to work through around my own voice in the beginning, and like having anything smart to say. And, I was working through all of that stuff, and I feel like I've grown with my show. So it's just been a really cool thing. I think that's what I needed. But the first 2 weeks I was a nervous wreck. I'd wake up in the mornings just feeling sick, and I'm like, I have to talk to people. And it was just like my nervous system was freaking out. But after that couple of weeks, it was just like, she makes us do this all the time. So I kind of got used to it. So I think again, like our ADHD can be a superpower, because there's no way I would have jumped into that on my own.
Yeah.
No way.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I woke up one morning with a wild hair up my butt, and I'm like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Later, I'm like,
that's I think how every ADHD decision gets made. It's like, I just woke up with this fantastic idea and it's going to happen today. And if it doesn't happen today, it will never happen.
And then here we go. Yeah.
6 months down the line, you're like, why did I start this again?
Yes. So I just love that we're being able to have this conversation and just kind of show the good around HD, showing the really the cool parts of it. It can be stressful, when we put ourselves in those situations with those deadlines, but look at how much think of how much personal growth also comes from, right? And so the other thing that I love that you're doing here, you're helping women with ADHD manage their emotions. Is that right? Like, that's a huge thing. Have you noticed, do women with ADHD have a harder time with that?
Well, definitely. I mean, emotional regulation is a massive issue with ADHD, because we're so, we're very much about how things are right now in the here and now, and because we can hyper focus on that feeling. So, I'm having a really bad moment becomes, oh my God, my life is so terrible, because we very quickly remember all the reasons why we've ever felt bad, and we can like really pile negativity on negativity upon negativity. And because we can hyper focus, it can just be so hard to stay there. And we need positive emotion to be able to move forward. So we need to feel good about anything so that we can move forward. And if all we're doing is focusing on the bad, then all we do is push ourselves further down into the bad. And it can take like a mammoth effort then to get ourselves out of that and into feeling good. And it can be, what started out as, I forgot, I've left the washing in the machine for 3 days again, can spiral very quickly down into I am absolutely useless and I'm a terrible housekeeper, I'm a terrible mother, I'm a terrible human being because we left the washing in the machine for a day. We can spiral so quickly.
Yeah, I would do that with my kids. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be like, oh my God, I forgot to get like something for a school project, or I forgot to buy them new shoes that I've been needing to do for like 2 weeks, or, something like that. And I'm just like, oh, I'm the worst mom ever. Why can't I get it together? Like, oh yeah. So I can see that. I can definitely see that. So what are some tips that do you provide any tips on anything for healthier ways to manage these emotions? What are some ways that we can?
So the thing that helped me the most when I was when I've been on this journey has been learning to breathe properly. So using your breath to calm yourself down when you're feeling stressed, to bring yourself into bring yourself out of your head, basically get yourself out of your head and just use your breath to just bring your nervous system back into a calm state where you can actually function. So breathing and journaling, or not so much journaling, free writing, just sitting there and just letting your brain empty itself through the paper. I've done an awful lot of healing through writing, and because of writing has been such a big part of my journey, I'm actually doing professional copywriting now. So I've kind of gone on and realized that I can write. So I'm doing professional copywriting because I realized that writing is something that I enjoy, is something that I do. I use it for my own mental health, but I can also use it to help other people as well. So it's that's been really powerful. I mean, I've healed myself through, so a lot of my recovery came through writing. A lot of my processing of my the grief that I talked about earlier on about ADHD, a lot of that came through writing. I used to do I don't do it anymore because ADHD, but I used to write 750 words every day. I used to make a point of doing that. There's the website 750words.com. So I used to write on that every day. And most of the time that would be dealing with some emotional problem or another. So I've kind of got over heartbreak through that. I've processed the pandemic through writing. I wrote my way through dealing with what's been going on with COVID. So writing, I think, ultimately, I think if I had to choose one of those two things that I could do for the rest of my life for my well-being, writing probably is the more powerful of the two, because when you're doing the breathing, like I've combined the two sometimes. So I'll do this deep breathing for a while and then I'll go and write, and that's a powerful thing to do. But when you're writing, especially if you do it every day, you start to see patterns in what you're writing, and you're thinking, I'm doing this, I'm talking about this again, am I still going over this? Am I still writing about this asshole of a man? Am I still writing about him? Really? Am I still, and you find yourself like, why am I still focusing on this? And then that becomes what you deal with. And then it's, you become a lot more aware of the repetition of your thoughts, the fact that you're hyper focusing on things becomes really obvious when you're writing them down every day, whether you're typing it or writing it by hand. You can't avoid confronting what you're holding on to when you're writing it down. Whereas with the breathing, like what passes through my head when I'm sitting on my yoga mat, I got ADHD. I couldn't tell you an hour later what thoughts I'd had while that was happening. But if I've written them down, I know what was going on. So yeah, the writing is really powerful. It's also, of course, really good as a way to, remind yourself of stuff that's happened. But it is very good for dealing with that overall emotional stuff. If you're feeling your head is full of stuff, just write it all down. Even if you just write a list, you've got 400 things that you think you need to get done that day. Spend some time writing down and then go through it, and you can think, do I actually need to do that? Do I really need to do? Is that ever going to get done? I'm never going to do that. So that can get crossed off. I know I'm not going to do that. And you can like go through and see how much stuff you're filling your head up with and how much you can let go of. It's really powerful.
Yes. And sometimes I'm filling my head up with more than is even like there. Sometimes when I do take that, where I'm just like, I have so much to do, and I'm like, okay, put it on paper. And then like I put it on paper and I'm like, you don't have that much to like, it's not that much. But yet in my head, it was just running into all of these things and felt enormous. So I would love to know, what other things do you use to manage your ADHD? So the breathing, the journaling, do you have other things that you're using to manage?
So I stopped taking my medication a while ago. I was taking medication, but the first lot that I had did something weird to my circulation in my hands, and it messed with my I was getting numbness in my hands and feet a lot. And I wasn't even sure if it was actually doing anything because I still felt quite scattered. And, you know, it was very much like, I'm going to do it if I want to do it. I'm not going to do it if I don't want to do it. And the medication didn't seem to make any difference. And then I got given a different type of medication. And the first day I took that, I could barely remember what my name was. It was, I was like 100 times worse than on my worst ADHD day. So I've still got the nearly full pack of that. I just thought, no, whatever that is, I'm not going there. So I'm not medicated at all at the moment. And what I've done is I followed a course last year by, have you heard of Tracy Otsuka? She's got another podcast, the ADHD for Smart Ass Women, and she runs a program which is all about helping you kind of learn how your ADHD works and how you can bring the best of yourself out. And I did her program last year. And she starts by getting you to work out your values, and you look at your strengths, and you look at what it is about life that you are really passionate, what fires you up in life. And it's a brilliant, I mean, as a personal development exercise, it was phenomenal because I'm still learning based on what she taught me a year ago. And so as a result of that, I changed my life and I quit the job that I was doing that was kind of draining me. And now I'm copywriting, which is work that I love. So it gives me that creative outlet, and there's variety and there's challenge, and it's not too hard that I feel overwhelmed, but it's what Dr. Edward Hallowell calls the right difficult. So it's challenging enough that I have to work at it, but not so hard that I think I can't do this, I don't want to do it, so I procrastinate. So what really manages it, what I'm really doing right now to manage it is I've built a life around how my brain works. So, you know, I do my exercise and I do my writing, and I go for walks, and I do that. I put music, I listen to music a lot because music really helps. But it's come from working out who I am and how my brain works, and just crafting my life around me instead of trying to make me fit into the world out there. And I think that's the secret to success with ADHD. It's knowing yourself and building your life around who you are instead of who you think you ought to be, to fit into a world that you're never going to fit into. The world can bend around me for a change.
I absolutely love that advice, building a life around how your brain works, because it's not everybody else's life, right? It's yours. You've got to live it. You're the one that's got to, you know, take care of the responsibilities and still follow your passions and be you and take care of yourself. So it absolutely needs to be designed to work for you. I love that you say that because, you know, ever since I started working from home at the pandemic, and my kids have been home at the same time, and it's been so hard with you know, the different interruptions and this and that, but I was able to build something that's worked. Like, okay, so I work these couple of hours, and then, like, you know, I can't sit for a long periods of time either, like our podcast interview, we're coming up on like 40 minutes and I'm like, you see me over here like fidgeting. So like when I'm sitting working at my computer, like I can't sit for that long period of time. I got to get up, I got to fidget. And see, if I had a traditional job, I don't know if they would allow that. But sometimes after 40 minutes, I'll get up and I'll just go do maybe a short little workout, or I'll go do a little dance, or I'll go for a little walk, or I just can't like I have to to get up and do other things. And so I think, yeah, if I was at a regular job, there's no way that they would have commented that Christy's not at her desk again. Where'd she go?
Another thing that I discovered at the start of lockdown, and this was thanks to Tracy Otsuka, was FocusMate. I don't know if you've heard of FocusMate. Focusmate.com. I'm certain that the guy who started it has ADHD. It's a body doubling, co-working accountability system. So you use video, you partner up with somebody for 50 minutes and you have a video call and you say what you want to achieve at the start of your session, and then you're working in silence, but you're on camera. And then at the end you say, how did you do? And you feedback how you did. And so I joined that last year, started using it back in April or maybe May when I started using it properly. And that transformed my ability to do my job. So I was working in a job that I really didn't like at the time, and I was very unhappy with the job. The work was really tedious most of the time. But I was very grateful to have a job when people were losing their job all over I was a single mom, and the last thing I wanted was to complain about this job because I needed the income. But I was really struggling, and having this thing where I was connecting with people all over the world, many of whom also had ADHD because they were there because it helps them with their ADHD. It gave that connection, which is so important for us with ADHD as well. We need to have, well, I certainly do, and I know lots of others with ADHD were like, just need to talk to people who get me. And that really helps because you have that short window. And I don't know about you, but if you give me a very tight deadline to do something, I can work miracles in that short amount of time. I can write a 1,000-word blog post in 50 minutes, or I can make it last 3 weeks, and I'll still leave it until the last 50 minutes. So that short window of accountability and the person at the end, and the more I did it, the more I started to form friendships with people. So then it's like, well, I can't lie to this person because they're my FocusMate friend. So that really helps because you've got that sense of support. Because, if you say, oh, well, I really struggled, I got completely distracted, they're not going to say, you're a terrible person, Esther, you're a real scumbag for not doing your work. They're going to say, oh, well, we're going through a tough time, you'll do better. And they're really supportive. So it was really good because it gave me that support, and it also took away a lot of the shame around those times when I wasn't productive, because I was able to just say, well, pandemic, my head's all over the place, and have that real validation that was okay.
That's so big. Sometimes I think just having that validation that it's okay, that we couldn't focus on something, or that, maybe in my case, it takes me so long to get something done. Just that validation, so I would love to know, if we want to come and find you, where are we able to find you at online?
Well, that is the ever-changing question. So right now, I've got, I don't know, the last count, 4 websites. One of my ADHD things is I keep buying domain names and building new websites. How many have you got?
I have, well, when I first started, I think I went through 3. My husband finally got to the point. I was talking again recently about a name change. I'm just like, I don't know. And he's like, oh my God, here we go again. And I'm like, no, I like this one. I'm like, I'll make it all squish into this name. So I'm on my 3rd.
So my Helping Women with ADHD Emotions website is called stillwildmind.com. And if anyone wants to hire me as a copywriter, that is also for ADHD entrepreneurs, because I love working with people with ADHD. And that is Be Here Right Now adulthood.co.uk, and it's be here right now, write as in what you write, I'm a writer, so it's be here right now. Bit of Ram Dass inspiration there. It's also a George Harrison connection, because my tattoo is George Harrison's got a song called Be Here Now, so it's more to do with George Harrison than Ram Dass, if I'm honest.
So I'd love to know, I was actually going to, I'm glad this is a great segue into my next question. So I would love to hear one of your stories about one of your tattoos, maybe the one that means the most to you, or your favorite, or your best story. I'd love if you just shared one of your stories with us about it.
Okay, well, I will tell you about my last one. So I got 2 tattoos at the same time. My last session, I got 2. So I got one on I'm going to show you the people I can send you photos if you want to put them with the podcast. So I've got this here, which is a beautiful multicolored feather, and it's a quill that is feeding. It's just written some words, and those words are from the Beatles' Blackbird. And the line is, "You were only waiting for this moment to be free." Now, I got this to celebrate giving up my job, moving into freelance copywriting, and taking my son out of school to home educate him permanently that's one of the gifts that the pandemic has given us. And at the same time, I also got this hummingbird on the other arm. And the hummingbird I chose because somebody told me that it was the perfect representation of ADHD, because hummingbirds are bright and colourful and translucent and move around really fast. And there were some other things as well about the way that the light, the iridescence of them, and just how brilliant and beautiful they are, and how wonderful they are. So yeah, I got that. And this line from Blackbird, this is a song that I've sung with my son every night at bedtime when he's not with his dad. And it fits because I've just redone my values, my top values, and my top sort of life theme values is freedom. And everything I'm doing in my life at the moment is about moving towards a place where I can be a bit more free, so I can travel and have a bit more adventure and freedom in my life. So yeah, I love these. And these are well, no, they're all pretty colourful actually. But yeah, the Blackbird line, I think, would probably be my favourite out of those 2, because it's so meaningful for me and my son. And it was a Christmas present from him as well. I paid for it, but it was from him.
Yeah, it was from him, right? That's how it goes with my husband too. I'm like, I'm just gonna buy this for myself. That's my Christmas present. That's my Christmas present. I just bought myself my present. Okay. Sharing that with us. Yeah, we were talking the very beginning, before we started recording, about how both of us have many tattoos, and how all of them have a story, all of them have a meaning behind them. So I think that's so cool. I think it's just a story written across your body.
I think I mentioned to you that I did a talk about my tattoos a few years ago, and I called it "The Stories on My Skin." That was the title of the talk.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I'm like, that inspired me. I'm like, I might do a blog post about like the meaning behind all of them. That's a great idea, because there's such a story behind each of them. So thank you for that inspiration for myself. I feel like I have lots of inspiration. So many great things from this episode. You've given us resources. I just have to tell you, Esther, it has been an absolute joy being able to talk to you today. And I love it, because a lot of my episodes, I end up just going all over the place with them. Like, oh, but what about this? Okay, tell us about this. Tell us about this. And you have just been absolutely right there with me. Like, yep. Okay. Yep. I'm telling you, I'm right there. So I just have to thank you. This has been incredible.
It's been fun. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to speak with you.
Thank you. So I want to make sure, if you're listening to us today, go ahead and scroll down. Both Esther and my information will be down in the show notes. Please connect with us. Let us know how you like this episode. Let us know if you yourself have ADHD, and if some of these resources have helped you. If you've never heard of them before, we would love to hear from you. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Self Project podcast. Make sure that you scroll down and you check out the show notes so you can connect with our awesome guests from today. And also come over and follow me on Instagram at _Christy Martin to see more of what I've got going on. Make sure that you've subscribed to the show so that you can get regular updates, and I will see you next time.